I'm Carla Sutter, and I'm the Director of Health Current's Arizona Healthcare Directives Registry. Today's video is Let's Be Direct, why you are never too healthy to talk about advanced care planning. Many of us hide behind our youth and our health when it comes to planning for the future. But if 2020 taught us anything, it's that we can't always hide and that it's always too early until it is too late. There's a lot of research that has been done with both consumers and healthcare providers around advanced care planning. Some of the research has showed that 80% of deaths will occur under the care of healthcare professionals in some type of health setting. And when the time comes to make end-of-life decisions, approximately 50% of people are incapable of participating in those decisions because of their health situation. 90% of people say that talking with their loved ones about end-of-life care is important, yet only 27% have actually done so. 60% of people say that making sure their family is not burdened by tough decisions is extremely important. Yet 56% have not communicated their end-of-life wishes. 80% of people say that if seriously ill, they would want to talk with their doctor about those wishes. Yet only 7% report having had these conversations. Our lives are busy. This year has shown us that our plans can often be disrupted from outside sources with no opportunity to change course. Having the knowledge that certain aspects of our lives have been communicated and documented can provide us not only peace of mind, but assurance that we value and care about what we want will be carried out, even when we are not the ones able to direct it. It's important to use the resources we have, our time, our finances, our energy, in the most beneficial ways. To do that, we need to know what we can control, what we can influence, and what we can't control. Steve Covey developed the circle of influence to remind us to use our limited resources efficiently. Completing advanced directives and having conversations with our family is something that you can control, and in the end can have a large influence on how an advanced illness or healthcare crisis will in the end play out. According to the National Institute on Aging, advanced care planning consists of learning about the types of decisions that might need to be made, considering those ahead of time, and then letting others know about your preferences, often by putting them into an advanced directive. For our discussion today, the documents we are discussing are a living will, which is a legal document that outlines your instructions in relation to medical care and treatment. It can include your wishes about organ donation, funeral planning, artificial life support, nutrition and hydration, pain management, to name a few. A healthcare power of attorney is also a legal document that gives the power to an individual of your choice to make or really voice the decisions on your behalf when you are unable to. Technological and medical advances have opened up many more life-extending treatments. Those who are young have to consider that their bodies are stronger and healthier, and in the case of a debilitating accident, would potentially benefit more from these treatments. However, they do not ensure that they are not simply extending lifetime, but not life quality. So I want to begin talking about surrogate decision-making. Individuals may be engaged in relationships which are not legally recognized. And because of this, these significant persons would not be recognized by the healthcare system as your decision maker, unless you have legally completed a healthcare power of attorney. The state's surrogacy rules would apply. This could instead see one's parents or siblings as your decision maker. Often families in a crisis will react in ways that does not represent them otherwise and could shut out or minimize any role that your significant other could play in your care. Unless you have a legally appointed healthcare power of attorney or the court has appointed a guardian on your behalf, this is the state guideline on decision-making. The patient's spouse, unless the patient and spouse are legally separated. An adult child of the patient, and if the patient has more than one adult child, the healthcare provider shall seek the consent of a majority of the adult children who are reasonably available for consultation. A parent of the patient, if the patient is unmarried, the patient's domestic partner, a brother or sister of the patient, and a close friend of the patient. For the purpose of this paragraph, close friend means an adult who has exhibited special care and concern for the patient, who is familiar with the patient's healthcare views and desires, and who is willing and able to become involved in the patient's healthcare and to act on that patient's best interest. But let's talk about help for those close to you and think about the generation to generation impact that you as a younger, healthier person can have when you begin to explore and complete advanced directives. Younger generations are often the guides for those who came before them. Countless young people have shown parents and grandparents how to set up their Facebook page, for instance, or complete a Zoom call this year. By completing your advanced directive and sharing the experience with your family, you make it that much more likely that they too will complete their documents. We should never ask others to complete a document that we have not, as it indicates that you don't see enough value in it and your motivation for them to complete it becomes suspect. Let's talk about stress and decision-making. How much stress you are experiencing will affect the way that you make decisions. Thinking about healthcare choices when you are healthy will better allow you to focus on your own values, hopes, and preferences. Research shows that when we are under stress and making decisions, there can be two different issues at play. Some will focus more on the negative outcomes of any decision, while you may actually pay more attention to the upsides of the alternatives they are reviewing, which in fact can blur the facts on either side. Additionally, our brains are hardwired to be more reactionary under stress. If we're making decisions in a stressful time, then we may unknowingly simplify our options to an all or nothing exercise. We may make a gut reaction or find ourselves in analysis paralysis. We need to remember that there are no challenges that only have two possible options or solutions. Working through challenging conversations with ourselves or others requires us to be able to develop a larger set of options, something best achieved when we have the time to process and in a space that is less stressed and more neutral. Often younger, healthier people will say, well, people know me and know what I would want. I'm an open book. It is true that we often have conversations with loved ones about healthcare and end-of-life choices. Often these pickup conversations are in response to a news story or a movie that you've just seen. Many times, these are interspersed between other conversations, and they certainly are not recorded in any formal way. These conversations are not the way to ensure that your wishes are honored. The person you had this conversation with may no longer be available when you would need them to share with your healthcare team. They may not have legal standing. They may not be your next of kin or legally appointed healthcare power of attorney. And even if they were available and are your recognized surrogate, a conversation not documented does not offer confirmation to this person of your direct choices. In their own stress and sadness, they may feel burdened by the decisions and without a written reminder may question themselves. As a hospice social worker, I often had opportunities to speak with families both during and after a crisis. And one story that stands out is a story of a young woman in her 40s who was in a long-term relationship with her fiance, and he had a very unexpected health crisis and a massive heart attack. He was unconscious and his prognosis was very poor. In her situation, the family of his was very open to her being the decision maker. This is often unusual because, as I said, during times of stress, families often kind of need to feel in control and will take on some of those decision-making roles themselves. But they let her know that it was important that she be the decision maker as his fiance. But it came to the point where she had to make a decision about organ donation. And this is not something that they had spoken of. He had a 16-year-old son who came to her and said, recently, when I went to get my driver's license, my dad told me that he wouldn't complete the document for me unless I checked organ donation. I know that my dad valued and believes in organ donation, and that's what he would want. Well, it was a wonderful opportunity for the family to feel that they understood what his wishes were. It was an incredible burden for this young man to have to be the voice of the decisions for his father. And it was a great reminder to them all afterwards that each one of them needed a written plan as an advance directive. Oftentimes we will say, I have time for these types of decisions. I promise I will do it soon. It's interesting to note that the three of the most recognized and high-profile legal cases in recent times involved healthy people in their 20s who suffered catastrophic events. These individuals did not have documented advance directives, and their lives and eventual deaths were challenged every step of the way and thrown into the public eye. Anne Quinlan in 1975, Nancy Cruzan in 1983, and Terry Schiavo in 1990. It was actually in the wake of the Cruzan case that the federal government passed the Patient Self-Determination Act, the foundation for advanced care planning taking place in medical systems around the country. These cases have also been the starting point for many conversations among families. Quote, if I am ever like Terry Schiavo, I would want. The legacy of these three women and their families who were ultimately left with the impact is that they should make the case for us to have a talk with our families and loved ones. And before we recoil at the idea of this, think about the other talk that many of us have had with our adolescent children or have had to sit through when we were on the other side of the table, hearing at our parents. In comparison, I would like to assure you this one is easier. But what about the idea that my views will change as I get older or become unwell? Many people will use the idea that their views are always changing with medical advancements, aging, or health changes as a reason they have not completed a document. It is true that life choices do change as our experience and situations change. These documents are not meant to be static, but to be something that you continue to review and change as you or your situation changes. Documents will and should change over time. We actually talk about the 5 Ds to help guide you when your decisions should be reviewed. Every decade, divorce, or change in a relationship status, diagnosis, death of someone around you will often make you think about your own choices and may make you want to adjust some of the things that you had thought. And decline. If you have had a diagnosis and things are changing or the prognosis has changed, you definitely want to look at your documents to ensure that the healthcare wishes you have put down continue to represent what you would want today. If you would like additional information on any of the discussion points on today's video, please feel free to reach out to Health Current's Arizona Healthcare Directive Registry program.